You just paid off your house. But congratulations, you might have just made the biggest financial mistake of your life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to reveal something that most financial advisors won't tell you, and most people who paid off their mortgage wish they knew before they made that final payment. Listen, paying off your house feels incredible. I remember the day I made that final mortgage payment. I called my wife, we celebrated, we posted it on social media, and everyone congratulated us. It felt like we'd finally won at personal finance. We were mortgage-free. We had zero debt. On paper, it looked perfect. But here's what happened in the months that followed. And this is crucial. I started noticing things. Financial opportunities were passing me by. My wealth actually stopped growing the way it used to. And honestly, my net worth started moving in a direction I didn't expect. I had more money every month. Yes, but I was actually becoming less wealthy overall. This is the paradox nobody talks about. See, most personal finance advice is designed for average people with average situations. But when you step into a different financial bracket, the rules completely change. And the rule about paying off your house as fast as possible? That's not a universal truth. It's actually a strategy that works against wealthy people. Now, before you think I'm crazy or that this is some get-rich-quick scheme, it's not. This is based on real financial principles that the wealthy use every single day. Principles that are completely legal, completely ethical, and completely misunderstood by most people. Here's the thing. You were probably told that debt is bad, right? Get out of debt as fast as possible. Pay off your mortgage. Be debt-free. That narrative is everywhere. Dave Ramsey, your parents, probably even your financial advisor told you this. And for certain types of debt, credit cards, car loans, yes, they're bad. But a mortgage? A mortgage is a completely different animal. A mortgage is what we call good debt. And the reason it's good debt is because of something called leverage. Let me explain this simply. When you take out a mortgage, you're borrowing money at a relatively low interest rate, let's say 6 or 7%, to buy an asset that historically appreciates in value. That's the foundation right there. But here's where most people get it wrong. They focus on the interest they're paying. Oh, I'm paying $200,000 in interest over 30 years, and they feel like they're losing money. And yes, technically, you are paying interest. But what they're not calculating is what they could be doing with the capital they freed up by not paying off that house. Think about it this way. Let's say you have $200,000 sitting in your bank account. You have two choices. Choice 1. You pay off the remaining balance on your mortgage and eliminate that monthly payment. Choice 2. You keep that $200,000 invested and continue making your monthly mortgage payment. Which one actually makes you wealthier? On the surface, choice 1 sounds better. No debt, right? Peace of mind. But here's the reality. If you're investing that $200,000 at 10% returns in the stock market, which is historically average, you're making $20,000 a year. Your mortgage is costing you maybe 6%, which is $12,000 a year. So you're netting $8,000 a year in pure profit just by keeping the mortgage and investing the money instead. But it gets even more interesting. Because that mortgage payment, it's fixed. It never changes. Inflation eats away at that debt year after year. So in real terms, your mortgage is actually getting cheaper and cheaper as time goes on. Meanwhile, the assets you're investing in are growing. You're making money on both ends. This is what the wealthy understand. This is why rich people don't pay off their mortgages early. Now let's talk about something that's going to blow your mind. The tax benefits of keeping your mortgage. When you have a mortgage, you get to deduct the interest you pay from your taxable income. That's real money back in your pocket every single year. If you're paying $12,000 in mortgage interest annually, and you're in a 24% tax bracket, that's nearly $2,900 back from the government. That's not theoretical. That's actual cash. When you pay off your mortgage, you lose that deduction instantly. So not only are you giving up investment returns, but you're also giving up a significant tax advantage that Uncle Sam was basically handing you every year. The government was subsidizing your mortgage, and most people don't even realize it. The moment you pay it off, that subsidy disappears. But here's the biggest issue, and this is what I want you to really think about: the psychological shift that happens when you pay off your house. You feel rich. You feel safe. Your monthly expenses drop dramatically. So what do most people do? They relax. They stop being aggressive with their finances. They think, okay, I've won. I can slow down now. And that's when the real financial damage happens. Because wealth isn't built on being debt-free. Wealth is built on consistent growth, strategic leverage, and compound returns. The people who stay wealthy keep working their money, keep investing, and keep using smart debt to amplify their gains. Meanwhile, the person who paid off their house is sitting pretty with a paid-off property, but watching their net worth stagnate. And 5 years later, while they thought they were winning, everyone else pulled ahead. Let me give you a real example. Sarah paid off her $400,000 house at age 45. She was so proud, and rightfully so. She'd worked hard for it. Her monthly payment was $2,500, so suddenly she had an extra $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 a year. She felt relieved. But here's what she did with that money. She saved it. She was cautious. She didn't want to overextend herself. So that $30,000 went into a savings account earning 4% interest. Meanwhile, her friend Michael kept his mortgage. Same house value, similar payment. But Michael took that $2,500 a month and invested it aggressively into index funds and real estate deals. Over the next 15 years, Sarah's extra payments added up to $450,000 in her savings account. Michael's investments grew to over $1.2 million. Sarah has a paid-off house worth $600,000. Michael has a mortgaged house worth $650,000 and $1.2 million in liquid assets. Michael is exponentially wealthier, and he still has a mortgage. The problem is that most people don't see it this way. They see the house as their nest egg, their safety net. But a paid-off house isn't a liquid asset. If you need money, you can't just grab it from your house without selling or taking out a loan. Meanwhile, the wealthy keep their mortgages specifically because it forces them to invest the capital elsewhere. It keeps them disciplined. It keeps them growing. And here's the final piece. When you pay off your house, you think you're reducing risk, but you're actually increasing it. Because now all your wealth is concentrated in one asset, your home. You're not diversified. You're not liquid. You're vulnerable to market changes, property taxes increasing, and emergency situations. The wealthy spread their wealth across multiple assets precisely to avoid this trap. They understand that true financial security doesn't come from owning one asset outright. It comes from owning multiple assets and managing them strategically. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what about peace of mind? What about not having to worry about a mortgage payment? And yes, that's real. That emotional benefit is real. There's something psychologically powerful about knowing you own your house completely. No bank can ever take it from you. You sleep better at night. I get it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Peace of mind is a luxury good, and it comes at a price. The price is your wealth growth. The wealthy understand this trade-off, and they consciously choose wealth growth over peace of mind. They understand that feeling anxious about debt is actually a sign that your money is working for you. If you have a mortgage at 6% and you're investing at 10%, that anxiety you feel about debt is actually the sound of money being made. It's the sound of leverage working in your favor. So they lean into it. They don't run from it. But here's what happens to the average person. They pay off the house, they get that peace of mind, and then they stop thinking about money altogether. They stop investing aggressively. They stop looking for opportunities. They become passive. And 10 years later, they realize that their net worth barely moved while their friends who kept mortgages are significantly ahead. By then, it's too late. Compound returns have done their work, and the gap is massive. The real tragedy is that most people think paying off their house is the finish line. They think that's the goal of personal finance. But it's not. It's actually a pit stop that most people mistake for the finish line. True financial freedom doesn't come from owning your house. It comes from having enough passive income and invested assets that you never have to work again. And the fastest way to build that is to keep your mortgage, invest your capital, and let compound returns do the heavy lifting. That's what separates the wealthy from everyone else. Here's something that blows people's minds when I explain it. Inflation is actually your best friend when you have a mortgage. Let me show you what I mean. Your mortgage payment stays the same for 30 years. Let's say it's $2,000 a month. But in 20 years, because of inflation, that $2,000 will feel like paying $1,000 today. The debt is literally shrinking in real terms while everything else around you is getting more expensive. Your salary is growing, but your payment isn't. That's an advantage most people never leverage. Meanwhile, what's happening to that house? It's appreciating. Real estate historically appreciates 3 to 4% per year. So you're borrowing at 6%, investing in an asset that grows at 4%, and inflation is eating away at your debt. On paper, you're technically losing money on the interest rate spread. But in reality, you're winning because the asset is appreciating and the debt is shrinking in real terms. It's a mathematical advantage that most people completely miss. The wealthy know this, so they actually do the opposite of what most people think. Instead of paying off their mortgages early, they refinance when rates are low. They pull out equity. They take on more debt when they can invest at higher returns. I know that sounds crazy, but that's literally how generational wealth is built. They use the banking system as a tool, not as an enemy. They understand that debt itself isn't the problem, bad debt is. But here's the reality check. This strategy only works if you're disciplined. If you take out a mortgage and waste the money, you're screwed. If you refinance your house and gamble with the capital, you're screwed. The difference between the wealthy and everyone else isn't that they use debt. It's that they use it strategically, with a plan, and with investments backing it up. They don't just borrow for the sake of borrowing. They borrow to invest in appreciating assets or income-producing investments. So what's the actual strategy if you're not paying off your house? First, you keep your mortgage and you get crystal clear on what you're going to do with that money. If you don't have a plan, don't do this. The money needs to go into investments with expected returns higher than your mortgage rate. That could be the stock market, real estate investments, or a business. But it needs to be strategic. You're not just keeping debt for the sake of it. You're keeping it because you have a specific plan to deploy that capital profitably. Second, you need to understand your own psychology. Some people genuinely cannot sleep at night knowing they have debt. And you know what? For those people, paying off the house might actually be the right move. Because if the stress is keeping you from thinking clearly or making good decisions, then the peace of mind is worth more than the mathematical advantage. Personal finance is 80% psychology and 20% math. If the math doesn't work with your psychology, the math loses. Third, you need to be honest about your discipline level. The wealthy can handle debt because they're disciplined about investing. They're not taking out mortgages and then spending recklessly. They have systems. They have accountability. They have a plan. If you know you're not that person, if you know that extra money will just disappear, then maybe paying off the house is your best move. It's a forced way to build wealth by eliminating the temptation to spend. Fourth, consider your age and your time horizon. If you're 55 and you have 10 years until retirement, the math changes. You might want to pay off that house before you stop earning. But if you're 35 with 30 years of earning potential ahead, keeping that mortgage and investing could set you up for generational wealth. The younger you are, the more powerful this strategy becomes because compound returns have more time to work their magic. Here's what the wealthy do that most people never consider. They use their home as a tool to build more wealth, not as the final destination. Let's say you have a house worth $500,000 with a $300,000 mortgage. A normal person sees that and thinks, I need to pay off that $300,000. A wealthy person sees that and thinks, I have $200,000 in equity I can leverage. They refinance, pull out some of that equity, and invest it in another property or a business. They're using the bank's money to multiply their assets. This is called leveraging equity, and it's how most real estate fortunes are built. You're not trying to own one thing outright. You're trying to control multiple assets with other people's money. A simple example, You own a $500,000 house. You refinance and pull out $100,000. You use that to buy a $400,000 rental property with $100,000 down. Now you control $900,000 in assets, but you're only $100,000 richer in terms of your own capital. That's leverage. That's how wealth scales. But this only works if you keep your mentality focused on assets and returns, not on being debt-free. You're not trying to win a debt-free trophy. You're trying to build a portfolio. And every mortgage on your balance sheet is a tool that should be connected to an asset that's generating returns or appreciating. If you don't have that plan, don't do it. But if you do, this strategy can multiply your wealth exponentially compared to the person who paid off their house and called it a day. The final piece is understanding what rich actually looks like. Rich isn't having a paid-off house. Rich is having multiple income streams, a diversified portfolio, and assets that generate cash flow. Poor is having everything in one asset, your home. Middle class is owning their home outright and feeling safe. But wealthy? Wealthy is controlling 10 times more than they own, using other people's money strategically, and building a machine that generates wealth on autopilot. Which one are you trying to be? Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. What if things go wrong? What if you have a mortgage, you invest that money, and the market crashes? Or what if you lose your job? These are legitimate concerns, and the wealthy actually have a strategy for this too. They don't just blindly take on debt and hope for the best. They build buffers. They have emergency funds. They have multiple income streams. They structure their life so that even if one thing fails, they're not wiped out. The key is understanding the difference between calculated risk and reckless risk. A calculated risk is when you have a mortgage. You have investments that are historically proven to outperform that mortgage rate, and you have an emergency fund that covers 6 months to a year of expenses. A reckless risk is when you take on debt with no plan, no backup, and hope that everything works out. Most people who fail at this strategy fail because they're taking reckless risks, not calculated ones. Here's a real scenario. You have a $3,000 monthly mortgage at 6% interest. You invest $3,000 a month in index funds expecting 10% returns. The market crashes 30%. On paper, you've lost money. But here's the thing. You still have your mortgage, your income is probably still coming in, and historically the market recovers. Meanwhile, the person who paid off their house, they don't benefit from the recovery because they're not in the market. They're sitting on the sidelines watching other people's wealth grow while they stay stagnant. The real risk isn't the mortgage itself, it's overextending yourself. It's taking on debt you can't afford. It's investing in things you don't understand. It's having no emergency fund. The wealthy mitigate these risks ruthlessly. They know their numbers. They know their cash flow. They know their breaking point. And they stay well within their limits. If you can't say the same about yourself, then maybe the debt-free route is actually the smarter play for your specific situation. So here's the bottom line. Paying off your house isn't wrong. It's just not the only option, and for most wealthy people, it's not even the best option. The question isn't, should I pay off my house? The question is, what will make me wealthier? And for most people, the answer is keeping your mortgage, investing the capital, and letting compound returns do the work. But that only works if you have the discipline, the plan, and the psychological ability to handle debt. The real trap is thinking there's one right answer for everyone. There isn't. If you're the type of person who can't sleep at night with debt, pay it off. Your peace of mind is worth more than the mathematical advantage. If you're the type of person who gets motivated by leverage and has a plan to invest aggressively, keep it and build wealth. Know yourself. Know your psychology. Know your goals. Then make the decision that aligns with who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The wealthy understand that every financial decision is a trade-off. More leverage means more growth, but more risk. Less debt means less stress, but less growth potential. Paying off your house means peace of mind, but slower wealth building. Keeping your mortgage means stress, but faster wealth accumulation. There's no perfect answer. There's only the answer that's right for your situation, your goals, and your psychology. Here's my challenge to you. Stop thinking about being debt-free and start thinking about being wealthful. One is a destination that sounds good. The other is a strategy that actually works. If this video changed how you think about mortgages and wealth building, drop a like, subscribe for more content that challenges conventional wisdom, and comment below. Would you keep your mortgage or pay it off? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.